We are doing another tier list today, and today we are ranking every single legend in the game. Now, there are a couple things to take into consideration here. The first being that I am ranking these legends purely based off of their use in the ranked mode. Secondly, remember this is my tier list, and our opinions may differ from each other. So if your opinion is different from mine, then that's okay, and feel free to let me know in the comments what your top picks are for ranked right now. Thirdly, I would say that this is probably one of the most diverse metas we have seen in a long time, and honestly, there are so many legends that you could add to your rank squad. Anyway, enough waffling and let's get started. So starting things off, right down at the bottom of the D tier is Caustic. Now, Caustic has always been in the up and down. He's had his share in the meta, and he's also been in a horrendous state like right now. One of Caustic's biggest strong points is that he could see his enemies through his own gas, and his enemies would always have lesser vision on him. But with the new addition of the brand new health bars, when an enemy hits Caustic, they can still see his health bar through his gas. So while Caustic's vision will still be better, it takes away one of Caustic's strongest points. His gas also just doesn't do enough these days. I feel like a lot of the time I'm fighting a Caustic, his gas doesn't really affect me. He's dead before his gas has any real effect. So yeah, I would say that Caustic is one of the worst legends in the game right now, and honestly, I'm totally okay with that. Next is Valkyrie. Valk really doesn't have much going for her. The biggest selling point is definitely her passive. Her ability to fly at will makes her pretty good for evasion and getting better angles. But to be honest, anytime I'm fighting a flying Valk, it feels way too easy to track her. Her tactical is fine, but there are other legends who have similar abilities that are just straight up better. Like Maggie, for example. Her ultimate doesn't really have any use anymore because the devs decided to make her ultimate a usable item within the game within the form of the evac towers. So I think Valk definitely deserves some love. Thirdly is Mirage. Now Mirage has definitely become a lot stronger since release. He can res while invisible and he can respawn while invisible, which are both his strongest points by a mile. But Mirage has the same issue as Caustic right now. While he's in his ult, you can see the health bar above the real Mirage, so it's no longer a guessing game which is the real one, because you just spray them all until you can see it, right? But for now, he will remain in the D tier. Lastly for the D tier is Ashe. She is definitely the weakest of all of the Portal legends. Her ultimate can be used as a solid getaway strategy and for some solid rotations, but nothing really stops your enemies from just following behind you. A lot of the time when an Ashe ults in front of me to try and get away, I can see exactly where she will end up, allowing me to pre-fire on the end point and just take her down. Her tactical kind of came to light recently as an arc star combo where you could snare an enemy and then pound them with arc stars, but that's just a bit fidgety in my opinion and can only really be used in very niche situations. She's gonna sit in the D tier. First up in the C tier, I've got Seer. Seer has always been an absolute menace in Apex. He was released far too strong, and then we didn't see him for ages after his initial nerf. Then he makes his return to the meta, and now he's far too strong again. Then he gets nerfed again, and now he's pretty horrendous. I would say his ultimate is probably his strongest piece of kit, being able to gain wall hacks on an entire fight, but it does have to be used correctly, because if you don't, then chances are the enemies will just destroy it. His tactical has really seen the bulk of the nerfs. It used to be as soon as you see the Seer Q, it was quick, get out of it, but now I just don't really care if I get Seer Q'd. His passive is still quite good though, being able to spot out ratting teams or maybe being able to catch a guy trying to get an angle, so it is pretty solid. Secondly for the C tier is Rampart. Now Rampart's walls are really good, in the right situation though. If you're holding down a building, then I don't see anything wrong with them. But outside of that, they just don't really do much. If you're caught with your pants down in the open, her walls won't do anything for you because they will just break. Her best selling point is obviously her ult, being able to take out a minigun from between her ass cheeks and lay ham on the enemy team. In close range, you really do have to be careful of Sheila because it will just melt you. But honestly, mid to long range, her minigun just feels super inaccurate. But overall, if you use her correctly, she can be quite good, but not really worth putting into your ranked team in my opinion. Thirdly, in C tier, and it pains me to say this, but Octane. Despite Octane having one of the highest pick rates in the entire game, I could honestly say that is just because of how much fun he is to play. As someone who has played a lot of Octane, his biggest selling point for me is his stim. Combining Octane's Q with high skill movement tech not only looks cool, but feels amazing too. But in my opinion, 10 health for what is simply a speed boost is just too much. I used to love stimming into a fight, but now it feels like I'm almost handicapping myself by doing that, especially since his passive only regenerates 1 health per second, which just isn't enough. Now his ult can be used to get some solid rotations, but personally I think enemies are just too easy to track when they are on the jump pad, so Octane in my opinion could use a couple of small buffs here and there. Lastly for the C tier is Ballistic. I definitely think that Ballistic is a bit of an underrated legend. His Q can be absolutely devastating in 1v1 situations and can sometimes just win you the fight straight up, but in a team versus team fight, hitting someone with your Q doesn't really make much of a difference. If I get hit by it in a team fight, a lot of the time I will just D-peek and then fire my gun into the wall to make it run out and then re-engage. His ult also just doesn't do enough. It's cool and all to just go crazy with the ammo for 30 seconds, but if you were popping the ult, you're probably about to engage in a fight, meaning if you win the fight, then you're going to be given more ammo, and if you lose, well then it doesn't really matter, does it? Now for the B tier, where the middest of mid characters belong. And speaking of mid, first up is Wraith. Wraith really is about as mid as it gets right now. Her passive is honestly pretty useless, as it just does what other legends do but better. Her Q can be pretty good to get away, but most of the time if I see a Wraith, I can just rev Q or Pathfinder Q on top of her and kill her as soon as she comes out of her tactical. I think it's pretty good for pubs, but not really for ranked. Now her ultimate I honestly think is pretty horrendous. We've all had that situation where we are screaming at our teammate to drop her portal because there are 3 dudes swinging the corner on us, and that's kind of the problem. Anytime I see a Wraith portaling her team out, that to me signals that we have a solid few seconds to push the team because one is off fiddling inside of a portal while the other 2 are left to fend for themselves. Next for the B tier is Wattson. Now Wattson is cute, but that doesn't mean she's any good. Her tactical is pretty hopeless because it only takes a bullet or 2 to clear each fence, and very rarely do you ever get to take advantage of an enemy for actually crossing a fence. Her passive shield regen is honestly pretty bad as well because it's just too slow when you can easily just pop a shield cell instead. So her biggest thing is definitely her ultimate. My rank duo is sadly a Wattson Bane. There were some times where I think to myself, without Wattson here, we probably would have been dead. So really, she's just not that great. Next in B tier, I have Fuse. Now, Fuse has seen a lot of play recently in the pro scene, but his tactical is honestly just more annoying than anything else, and his ultimate is pretty good, but it's very much avoidable to be honest, plus the fire doesn't really do that much damage. Now his best thing is 100% his ability to carry more nades, which allows him to spam the hell out of grenades onto a team, which at the very least will get you some very nice opening damage, or just straight up knock someone. So I would say overall he is pretty solid, but he's just not that good for ranked. Next is Season 21's Alter. I would say that Alter has been introduced very well into the game, and she isn't incredibly broken, but she is very solid all around. Her weakest point is honestly her passive. It can be good to just check some boxes and see if they're worth looting, but really, what is stopping you from just going up to the box and checking it out for yourself? Her Q is pretty good though, being able to phase through walls, which is pretty good for third partying, especially on the new map, and it's obviously very good for pushing people who are holding a door, but the biggest problem with her Q is that sometimes you are just taking a chance when going through, as who knows what's on the other side of that wall? A caustic trap? A catalyst trap? Or maybe just an entire team. Her ultimate is honestly pretty weak though, with its only use really being able to transport downed teammates and maybe get a free reset from it, but I've had quite a few times where my downed teammate has taken it back, and then I've had a perfect chance to res them when they are are still here with me. So now I've got to take it all the way back too, and it just takes up too much time to do all that. Lastly, for the B tier is Catalyst. Catalyst is definitely the best legend for holding down buildings. Pushing a Catalyst can be really difficult when she just splooges up the doors, making them 4 kicks instead of 2. Adding your Q to all that makes it even more difficult to get in, especially when they have like 250 health. Now her ult is also pretty solid, with it having a lot of different uses. It can be used to escape a fight, push a fight, isolate a fight. So overall, the Queen of Splooge is pretty solid, but there were just better legends to pick from, to be honest. Moving on to the legends who are actually good with the A tier, and starting off is Gibraltar. In my opinion, Gibby meta was the best meta, and I will fight anyone about it, but recently Gibby has been used a lot less and really hasn't seen much love. But with the return of shotguns, Gibby can once again start to thrive a bit. If you and your team knows how to bubble fight, his Q can be used very aggressively, but it can also be used very defensively, with you being able to take complete cover and even res teammates faster, and it can be used to isolate fights. His passive gun shield is honestly needed, to be honest, because without it I feel like he's just way too big to be usable. His ult is also really good. Typically I would use this as a defensive tool rather than an offensive, but I've used it quite a lot to help isolate fights or use it to keep away a third party whilst me and my team heal up. So overall I would say Gibby is slowly starting to get better, and I honestly hope to see a Gibby meta at some point in the near future. Next for the A tier is Conduit. On release, Conduit was extremely broken and would be an easy S tier character, but now she's received a few nerfs and I think she still sits in a pretty good position. She's obviously a support character, which I think is a must for any ranked team. Her Q is a lot more balanced now, as it doesn't just instantly heal up her teammates, but still a very good to be used in fights. Her ult is also a fantastic crowd control tool, you know, same as Gibby, as it can be used to defer third parties or to isolate fights. So overall, she's still a very good legend to pick. Next is Vantage. I'm honestly happy to see Vantage is finally getting some play, as I think she is a very solid legend right now. Her Q is a fantastic tool for either evasion or getting height or getting angles. Her passive, I would honestly say, is very weak and there really isn't any use for it, but her ultimate is where she really excels. As soon as you see that bright orange laser looking at your forehead, it's get to cover immediately. If you do get hit by her first shot, then you really need to be careful, as one more shot of that gun and that is you dead. So she's really good for opening fights, and honestly I'm happy to see her getting some play. Next up is Horizon. As much as I hate the 4-3 linear controller Havoc Horizon players, she is pretty good still. Her Q is especially good on the new map because all of the verticality, so being able to lift herself and her teammates to pretty much anywhere is very good. Her passive is also very annoying, as it allows players with 0 hours in practicing their strafes to be able to strafe in a very unpredictable manner. Her ult is also very powerful in combination with grenades, and its use in breaking doors is extremely powerful too. So she's been good in pretty much every season since her release, and season 22 will be no different. Next up, we've got Crypto. Crypto just got a fantastic buff this season, allowing him to go invisible while in his drone, which has seen a lot of pro players picking him up. Crypto can scan how many squads are in the nearby vicinity, which is great info to have. You can also provide some free scans whilst fighting, so long as you place it in a good spot and the enemies don't destroy it. His biggest thing is being able to basically grab banners for free and respawn, so if you were solo queuing, he might be a legend you want to give a try. I honestly hate Crypto. I find him very annoying, and I would compare him to a fly being in your room. Second to last for the A tier is Bloodhound. Even though Bloodhound can no longer scan through smoke or gas, I would say that he is incredibly good being able to sniff out rats, and it's still super good if you just give a quick scan mid-fight. Plus the new permanent digital threat is cool. I wouldn't say it's insanely powerful, but it is a nice touch. I think his ult always feels really cool to use, and I'm pretty sure they made it so that his tactical has a shorter cooldown now whilst in his ult, but if I'm wrong on that, please correct me. So a very good legend still. And lastly for the A tier is Bangalore. She has seen a lot of massive nerfs recently, and rightfully so. If you asked me a few months ago, I would say that she is S tier, but that being said, she is still incredibly strong. She just has too much utility. Her smokes can be used to either on your team to provide cover, or you could smoke other teams, you can make rotations. Plus her passive is super nice with the speed boost, which can help you either whilst you're trying to make a getaway or just when you're fighting. It can give a super unpredictable strafing pattern. Her ult is almost the same as Gibby, with it having loads of utility and allowing you to control a lot of what's happening around you. So it's still an incredibly strong legend. Moving on to the best legends in the game with the S tier, and first up is Loba. I was struggling to find a spot for Loba, to be honest. I couldn't decide if I wanted to put her into the A tier or the S tier, but here we are. Her passive is kind of whatever, you know, it's cool and all, and it can help you and your teammates find that spicy loot early on in the match. Her Q is really good, allowing you to take height or just get some super nice angles, or just for getting away from a fight. She's also a support legend, meaning she can craft banners, which again is a must for any ranked squad. Her ult is where I like her the most. Being able to get your guns kitted out early feels like a great advantage to have, plus getting as much ammo as you could ever want is awesome too. Using Loba on the new map is honestly really rewarding, as the loot is super scarce and just very spread out. So until that gets fixed, I would 100% consider running Loba in your squad, or even if you were just solo queuing, she's great for that also. Next in the S tier is Mad Maggie. Maggie is such a good legend right now. Her tactical is probably close to being one of the best in the entire game. It's almost like the Fuse tactical, except way more annoying and deals way more damage. Her passive feels amazing to use. Being able to strafe quicker with shotguns can honestly be quite difficult for your teammates to track, and when you combine this extra speed with some movement stuff, she becomes insanely good. Her ult is also extremely powerful. Opening a fight with the ball to stun all of your enemies is just devastating, allowing you and your entire team to most likely get some free knocks. Plus, with her upgrade, you can also be throwing thermites at your enemies. It can also be used to smash down doors and stun whoever is holding it, which again is most likely to result in a free knock on your enemies. Plus, the speed pads can also be decent for making a getaway or getting yourself into the fight. So extremely good character, S tier. Next up is Newcastle. Honestly, this is one of my favorite characters right now. He just has so much utility that I would say he actually rivals Lifeline as the top support pick, although I do think that Newcastle requires a lot more skill to play than Lifeline does. So he is a support character, which is perfect. His Q can be used very similar to the way that Gibby Bubble would be, being able to use it defensively to buy your teammates some time, or you can use it relatively offensively with a shotgun to jiggle peek in and out of the shield for some pretty free damage or maybe even knocks. His ult is also very good now too, and can be used for a lot of different things like blocking doors, or just holding down a building, or just straight up protecting your teammates, especially since now it blocks out pretty much all ordnance and ordnance based abilities in the game, which is just amazing. His biggest thing is obviously his res. It's just really good, allowing you to move around while resing your teammates and providing you with this massive knockdown shield, which makes it super hard for your enemies to stop the res. Newcastle is just insanely powerful right now, and I would definitely use him as your support slot in your ranked matches. Second to last for the S tier is Lifeline. It could be argued that she is the best support legend in the game, but really there is absolutely nothing bad about having Lifeline on your team. Obviously she is a support character, which is an instant plus for her. Her Q provides the entire team with the ability to heal flesh damage, and pretty quickly too. Her ult is also just super solid, providing the entire team with loot and heals, and her biggest thing is her passive, which allows her teammates to res without having to actually res them. Just run up to your down teammate and press interact, and Doc will do it for you. Really, this is one of the best abilities in the entire game, allowing you to res while still fighting and protecting them. I cannot count the amount of times where I've either lost or been super close to losing a fight just because they've managed to get a free res off after we've knocked them. So insanely powerful legend, and honestly, if you're with a pre-made or solo queuing, Lifeline is 100% going to be one of your best picks right now. And lastly, for the S tier is Pathfinder. Again, this legend really has nothing wrong with him at all. His passive is good, allowing him to reduce the amount of time it takes for his ult to charge by simply scanning care packages, and when you do, the scan will instantly charge his ultimate. His Q is just fantastic, allowing you to take insane angles to engage a team, or it can be used to simply catch up to your teammates who are currently fighting, or it can be used to make a getaway if the fight goes bad. His ult is the absolute best rotation tool in the entire game, being able to shoot his zipline gun to insane distances, and with his purple perk, he can make it so that you and your teammates take very little damage whilst using those ziplines. So very good legend, and I would definitely be running him. So I've got one more tier, and that tier is the OP tier, and it's for only one legend, and that legend is Revenant. Now, I've been playing Revenant pretty much since Season 21 came out, and as much as I love him, I think he 100% needs a nerf. His passives are absolutely insane. He can move at normal walking speed whilst crouched, which is good in itself. He can climb walls up to 6 times as high and at quicker speeds, and with more movement, allowing him to climb around walls. And if Revenant gets an enemy to 40 health or below, the enemy becomes highlighted and you can see that through walls. His Q is amazing too. He can basically charge up a big jump ability which goes insane distances, and that allows him to either jump onto isolated enemies or take angles or just to push a team or make a getaway. His ult is absolutely overpowered, no questions about it. Simply, he gets an additional 75 HP that when he gets a knock will instantly recharge. Revenant is 100% the strongest legend in the game right now, and if you're not running him in your rank squad, then I would suggest getting him in there. But if I was going to nerf Revenant, I would say that nerfing his ultimate would be good enough. Reduce the HP from 75 to 50 and just remove the instant recharge on knocks, but keeping the recharge timer. So that is every single legend, but what would I say is the best rank composition right now? Well, my go-to squad would be Revenant plus Lifeline plus Pathfinder. It's a very aggressive squad that can open fights extremely well and can make very fast rotations, and all of that is backed up with the support of Lifeline. Alternatively, I would say that you're running Revenant plus either Newcastle or Lifeline or Maggie plus Pathfinder, and probably those are your best choices right now.